Welcome to the inner space. I'm Sriram, and this is the inner space where all transformation occurs. When we take a pause and look within, the veils are lifted and our innermost truth revealed. Through podcasts, guided exercises, meditations, and live events, my hope is that you have ready access to both a library and a laboratory for you to learn, unlearn, experiment, and claim the true human potential that resides within you. This journey is also an intersection where ancient wisdom meets modern science, where inner meets outer, and transformation becomes practical and real in your everyday life. In the first season of this series, we are going to focus on the common fears that individuals, students, entrepreneurs, people experience, understanding what the origins of fear are and what it takes to shift into a life of courage, curiosity, and possibility. We are going to speak to people and understand how they have traversed this journey, having conversations with entrepreneurs, athletes, students, and scientists. We are not just sharing information here, we are creating the conditions for inner awakening. In this journey, we'll explore our inner landscape together because everything we seek, everything we wish to understand, we don't want to meet it out there. We want to meet it in here, in the inner space. In today's episode, the first of this series, we are exploring the idea of scarcity and abundance. Scarcity is often considered as a condition associated with poverty or people who have absolutely nothing. That's actually not how scarcity is defined. Scarcity can show up in anyone's life. The experience of scarcity is one of not having enough. It can show up as not having enough time and always rushing, or not having enough money, no matter how much your bank balance already is, or not having enough success, no matter how successful people already deem you to be. It can show up as not having enough company, connection, or love, despite the number of people you are surrounded by and the number of followers on your favorite social media platform. Or it can show up as not having enough health, physical or mental, a silent thought that claws at the back of your mind, giving you the constant sense that you are not fit enough or healthy enough. What if I told you that the feeling of not having enough was more than just circumstance, that it's a mindset, a way by which you're trained to perceive yourself and the world, that takes over your lived experience, even without you knowing? And what if I told you that the same mind that finds itself in scarcity thinking can be trained to experience abundance, even when external circumstances haven't changed, and thereby lay the causes and conditions for the external to shift as well? In today's episode, you will explore what is scarcity, what is abundance, what do they really actually mean, not just the dictionary meaning, but what your inner felt experience of lack and plenty is. How does it show up in your thought patterns, in your emotions, in your body? What are the signs that can tell you whether you're operating from scarcity or abundance? Where in your life do you experience one or the other? And why does scarcity thinking exist in the first place? What is its purpose for being a part of the human experience. We are going to look at how you can develop an abundance mindset. We are going to demystify whether abundance is a genetic or an ancestral inheritance, or whether it can be cultivated. Is living from abundance nature or nurture? We're going to learn from the fields of business, sport, and science, looking at individuals who started off with absolutely nothing and with the right mindsets went on to become some of the wealthiest individuals on the planet. We're going to learn from sports teams who start off a match with almost nothing to go off and yet end up making historic victories with just what they have. And we are going to learn what science has to say about the causes and the effects of scarcity thinking and the effects of shifting to a paradigm of abundance. Finally, you are going to explore what can you do about this? What are some simple, practical ways by which you can heal your fears of scarcity and live from a frequency of abundance? So let's dive in to the inner space of scarcity and abundance. Let's start with an exercise. For the next 10 seconds, think of all the things you don't typically seem to have enough of. It could be any resource, anything that's precious and is important to you that you would say, I don't have enough of right now in life. So, for the next 10 seconds, think of all the things you don't seem to have enough of. Were you able to think of a few things? As the countdown progressed, did you feel you were running out of time to reflect? That you didn't have enough time to do this exercise well? Notice how the thought of not having enough makes you feel. If it makes you feel anxious, nervous, or insecure, I'm here to let you know that you are not alone. There's at least one more person that feels that way sometimes. Me. Some of the richest, most successful people in the world wake up every morning feeling tense and anxious that something will run out today, be it time or money or adoration or followers or hope. I'm also here to tell you that you don't need to live this way, that there is a wholly different way of life, and it's one moment of awareness away. So let's understand scarcity further, starting with definitions. How is scarcity even defined? It is defined as the feeling of having less than what we need, the feeling of having less than what I need. The operative word here is feeling. Your current bank balance, the square footage of your house, the number of people following you on Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever social media platform is important to you. These are all fixed at the moment. They are the reality out there. How do you feel about this reality? Inside, in the body, in the emotions that you experience every day. What thoughts come up when you think about these things in your life? That is the real scarcity or abundance. The feeling of having less than what we need or just enough. Let's understand this through a thought experiment. Imagine that you are shown the pictures of a farmer and a business executive. Which one of these would you call poor? If you thought of just one person, think again. Both can be rich, both can be poor. Scarcity researchers, as we will see later in this episode, use the terms rich and poor to describe both. An executive can be money rich and time poor, while a farmer can be money poor and relationship rich. It all depends on what you value and what you feel you lack. In fact, research even finds that you often feel lack in the things that you value far more than others. So, what are the feelings that come with not having enough? Usually, these are fear, anxiety, nervousness, frustration, anger, guilt, shame, embarrassment, and so on. These emotions are powerful signals telling us something important about what we value. Equally, if these are a sustained experience of life, no matter what your station in life, then that's not fun either to feel these emotions pretty much all the time. No matter how hard you're working or how much richer you are becoming by the day. Think about how scarcity shows up in everyday life. Maybe you are a student or have been a student who was anxious about finishing assignments, deadlines, exams, and feels that there is never enough time. Or maybe you're an entrepreneur who's nervous and paranoid about your business running out of money or time. Or maybe you're a parent who feels guilty or embarrassed that you only have so much money or so much time that you're able to set aside for your family that you care about so much. Or maybe you're a single person feeling lonely for a lack of companionship, that you don't have enough friends or loved ones in your life. So, what would it look like to live abundantly, even in the same situations we just described, and all the others too? What is abundance? How is it defined? Abundance is the trust that there is enough for ourselves and to share. It isn't about surplus or having so much that we lose track of or waste resources that we have. It isn't about a lavish life. Yes, a lavish life can feel abundant. A not so lavish life can also feel very abundant. Abundance is about presence, sufficiency, and the confidence that we are held and supported no matter what. It is knowing what we have, using it wisely, and trusting that we have enough both for ourselves and even a little more which we can give to others in need. If abundance is understanding what enough means for you personally, and if all it takes is to know how much money would be enough money, how much success would be enough success, and once you get there, to feel abundant for the rest of your life. If all it took was that, why is scarcity and the feeling of not having enough so common in human experience? Evolutionarily speaking, having enough meant the difference for our ancestors between survival and death for a long time. Sadly, it continues to be that way for a segment of humanity even today. For most of us, however, probably for you who's listening to this, having enough is no longer the difference between surviving and dying. This is really important for us to understand, to be free from the clutches of our conditioning, to define what enough really means for us and know it when we have it. An American psychologist, Abraham Maslow, proposed in the early 1900s through a theory called the hierarchy of needs that human beings are compelled to fulfill basic physiological needs before experiencing deeper fulfillment. Basic needs such as money, water, shelter, food, clothes. In ancient Hindu philosophy, in the chakra system, an ancient framework that links energy centers in the body to psychological and emotional development. In this philosophy, survival and safety and having enough are considered part of the developmental process of the root chakra or the first chakra in the body, also called the Mooladhara. Why is this such a fundamental need and experience of human life? And when it happens in daily life, what does it look like when we feel we don't have enough? The impact is significant. Aspiring entrepreneurs don't take the leap because they are still waiting for the perfect moment when they will have enough money, enough time, enough support. And sadly, their ideas, their dreams never take flight. Students experience overwhelm and depression in the early college years, collapsing under the load of work and assignments and the feeling that there's not enough time. Young professionals just joining the workforce collapse under a similar pressure, burning out early in the career, hoping to please or gain recognition from difficult managers that they work with, always feeling that they don't have enough approval or respect. Scarcity thinking can affect our mental health, it can affect our ability to focus and take good decisions, our appetite for risks, and in some cases, even our physical health. This issue of having enough is so fundamental, and this is why we chose it as the first episode, the first exploration of the inner space. So keep a notepad or your digital writing device handy. So here's a question for you to reflect on. What resource do you most often feel you don't have enough of or are running out of? Is it time or money or energy or health or companionship? How does this perceived scarcity shape your emotions and your daily choices? Let me share my personal experience of scarcity. For years, I lived with a profound sense of never having enough time. To an extent, I still do. I trace this back to the time as a teenager in school when, during exams and when I would prepare for exams at home, my mind would go into overdrive. I would feel nervous and a tension, a constant tension in the body. For me, usually in my shoulders and in my jaws. My teeth would grit. This is something I didn't even know was happening back then, and even much later on in life when I wasn't anymore writing exams or studying. Long after I had begun working, I noticed I still had some of these patterns in my body: tense shoulders, tight jaws, gritting teeth at night. I found this surprising when I discovered that patterns from over a decade ago still existed within me, even though my external reality had completely changed. My work and skills and capacity had all shifted in very positive ways. Yet, the inner experience of being given a task, a deadline, and the process of completing that task was much the same. This is characteristic of our inner conditioning. When certain patterns of thought and emotion and even the physiology of how we feel in the body that have been wired early on in our life continue to remain so even after everything in our external world has completely changed. Then there was the fear of not having enough money. Growing up, my narrative of my life was that we never had enough money because my unending desire as a child to own video games, consoles, toy cars, DVDs, gadgets were all usually met with my mom's poker faced no. Decades later, when I quit a cushy job to pursue my own entrepreneurial path, the early years were filled with anxiety. I'd find myself absent mindedly picking at my fingers or feeling insecure about the future. I'd get into potential discussions with new clients, always with the fear that they may say no and I would return to not having enough money. I'd play it safe, not take much risk, not push to create more value for the people that I served, and not pursue the creative ideas that I had left my old job for, all from a feeling of not having enough. Equally, I gained and learned from these times in my life. Scarcity can also be a teacher if we let it. I learned to focus on what I did have and think on my feet. When a lot of my demands as a child were denied, I turned my attention to the things that I did love and I did have: family, academics, the curiosity and pursuit of understanding the world around me. I learned to be creative and frugal and make the most of what I had. This is perhaps why I never noticed that there was an underlying scarcity mindset running my life, because it was working well for me. It was helping me focus on what I had, it was helping me pursue my studies and do it with sincerity and diligence until a time in life when it no longer was working. Because there came a time when I had mastered to a good degree the focus and creative expression that gave me joy and that I needed for my work and my life. I had found a vocation to pursue for the rest of my life that also gave me enough money that I needed. And I had found a partner to walk that journey with. And yet, I wasn't happy within. For some reason, life always felt not enough. The turning point came when I began to understand the nature of my inner reality. When I began to notice that for some reason, even as the conditions of my external life were changing, my inner reality wasn't changing as fast enough. I began to understand the nature of the mind that generates the unhappy thoughts that I was experiencing. I realized that my mind isn't a passive consumer of reality out there. It's actually the director of the movie. The mind is a creative instrument. Our thoughts are creative. They shape how we experience the world around us. For me, the scarcity was no longer out there. It had become part of the script within. It had become this blockbuster movie that just kept running on my inner screen for decades until The viewer within woke up until the moment came when I realized I have a choice in how this movie plays out. It's time for you to reflect now. What story of scarcity is your mind telling itself? Does it relate to time, money, energy, or something else? What is a moment in your life? If you paused the movie your mind has been playing for so long, what would you see more clearly about your life at present? A great way to see where you stand on the matter is to measure your current perceived level of scarcity or abundance across the various aspects of your life. For this, we will use a framework that traces its roots to over 1200 years ago, to the great Hindu philosopher Adi Shankara, who in his work, the Lingashtakam, mentions the Ashtadaridras, or eight poverties of human life. So take a moment to consider where you fall on the spectrum from scarcity to abundance, from lack to having enough in each of these areas. As I go through the list, give yourself a score from 0 to 10 for each of them. 0 being high scarcity. I don't have enough of this at all. To 10 being high abundance. I have enough for myself and to give. Be honest when you do this. If in doubt, go with the number that first comes to heart. So let's dive in. Give yourself a score from 0 to 10 on the following: 0 being high scarcity and 10 being high abundance. Number 1, basic needs: food, clothing, shelter. Do you have enough of these, or do you feel a scarcity? Number 2, financial stability: money, income, savings, net worth. Number 3, relationships: loved ones, friends, family, professional networks. Number 4, fulfillment and purpose: a sense of meaning and personal purpose that inspires you. Number 5, health and energy, both physical energy and mental health. Number 6, time and attention, your ability to focus and give time to the things that matter most to you. Number 7, spirituality and inspiration, a connection with something that's greater than yourself, that is a source of energy for you. And finally, number 8, personal growth, your own learning, development, and opportunities for your growth as an individual in life. For each area, simply notice: do I feel abundance here or scarcity? Now, let's debrief. What surprised you? What are you learning about yourself as you assess yourself on each of these dimensions? Did you find more abundance in your life to be grateful for than you typically acknowledge? Or did you uncover areas of scarcity that need deeper attention? In a recent session that I did with entrepreneurs, when the room completed this exercise, one common theme that came up was, wow, I didn't know I had so much to be grateful for. These were all entrepreneurs who were in various stages of the evolution of their company. None who had exited or made a great return as yet. And yet, amidst all the struggle and all the difficulty of building a business from the ground up, when many took a moment to pause, they concluded that they had so much to be grateful for, that they did have an abundance of the things that mattered most to them. It came as a surprise that this was true, even though their inner experience was often one of, I don't have enough, and rushing and hurrying and stressing to find more. Take a moment to reflect and journal your thoughts and learnings from this exercise. Now that you have an understanding of what scarcity means and what abundance means, and you have a sense of where you stand in your life, it's time to go deeper, to fully transcend a mental pattern or conditioning in yourself. It's helpful to understand the roots and origins of this conditioning. So let's understand where the scarcity mindset comes from. Why does it exist in the first place? Here's the headline: scarcity isn't just a mindset, it's an evolutionary inheritance, a neurological response, and a cultural imprint. From ancestral survival strategies to inherited fears and societal values that shape us, our perception of not having enough is shaped by forces far beyond us and far beyond the present moment. From an evolutionary perspective, for the body to be in a prolonged state of scarcity with a fear that it doesn't have enough resources makes perfect sense. Researchers like Daniel Nettle at Newcastle University posit that brains that prioritized immediate resource acquisition in uncertain environments passed on their genes more successfully. In other words, those who prioritized impulsive, short term reward seeking because they felt that they didn't have enough passed on their genes more successfully. So, scarcity thinking was an adaptive strategy that helped species survive. Neurologically speaking, here's what's fascinating: scarcity doesn't just shape your choices, it literally reshapes and restructures your brain. When you're under financial strain or constantly navigating limited resources, studies show that the part of the brain responsible for planning and thoughtful decision making, the prefrontal cortex responsible for logical thinking, becomes less active. At the same time, the amygdala, your brain's emotional alarm system that senses danger in the environment, can become more reactive under financial strain. What this means is that scarcity makes you more prone to impulsive decisions, more focused on getting through the here and now, and less able to hold space for the long term, for the future that you really desire for yourself. This is not a flaw. This is your brain doing what it was meant to do: adapt to a world that feels unpredictable. What's also fascinating is how scarcity patterns get passed down from one generation to the other. In studies conducted on mice, researchers found that if a generation was conditioned to associate a smell with electric shocks, their offspring would exhibit fear responses to that smell, even if the offspring had never encountered an electric shock themselves. We see this in human history too. In the final winter of World War II, in 1944 to 45, the Nazis imposed a blockade on the Netherlands, cutting off food and fuel supplies in an attempt to force surrender. This led to the catastrophic Dutch hunger winter, during which approximately 22,000 people died from starvation because no food nor fuel could come into the country. Because Dutch health records were so well kept even through this difficult period, we now have invaluable insight into the long term effects of famine and food scarcity. Researchers find that individuals who were in utero, i.e., in their mother's womb during the Dutch famine, particularly during early gestation, exhibited higher risk of obesity and metabolic disorder later on in their adulthood, a time when they no longer experienced the famine. This phenomenon supports a hypothesis called the thrifty phenotype hypothesis, which suggests that when a fetus in the womb experiences undernutrition, the lack of food, it adapts by optimizing metabolism and energy storage to prepare for a life of scarcity. The baby's body gets the message in the womb that food is hard to come by in this world. I better get good at holding on to every bit of energy that I get. And the body adapts to slow down metabolic growth and store fat more easily. So, even if the postnatal environment, the child's upbringing, and adulthood is one of abundance, this early adaptive logic to store everything can lead to increased risk of obesity and metabolic diseases. These findings underscore how early life conditions can have profound and lasting impacts on health, influencing not just the individuals directly affected, but potentially their descendants as well. Even in present time, then, small triggers can activate our body's survival response mechanisms long after these are necessary or helpful, and in the process end up hurting us. Finally, there's also the cultural conditioning. Research that compared 18 countries found consistent patterns. Individualistic societies like the United States report more time scarcity, while collectivist cultures, typically in Asian countries, experience more relational scarcity. Incidentally, these same things are also valued more strongly in these societies. Individualistic societies value more time for personal priorities, while collectivist societies value being in relationship. What we perceive as scarce is heavily influenced by what our culture tells us should be valued by us. This brings us to a powerful moment of pause and reflection. We often say, when faced with a change that seems difficult to make, ah, that's just how I am. The moment we shift from saying, that's just how I am, to asking, could this be how I was conditioned? We open up a whole new space of possibility. Because if it's conditioning, it's not permanent. It means we can examine it, unlearn it, and make different choices. And that right there is where lasting freedom begins. So here's a question for you to reflect. Which of your current scarcity patterns might you have inherited from your family or culture? In the last section, we explored where scarcity comes from, its evolutionary roots, neurological patterns, and even inherited fears. But how does it play out in our everyday life? What is the effect and the impact of scarcity thinking? Whether it's time, money, love, or energy that we feel is lacking in our life, the impact goes far beyond inconvenience. Scarcity can change how we think, how we feel, and how we act. It narrows our mental lens, distorts our choices, and even shrinks our sense of what's possible, making us more pessimistic. Let's look at what the research reveals about just how deeply this mindset affects us. Simply put, scarcity makes us take poorer decisions, makes us feel worse, and become more pessimistic. Research finds that scarcity reduces our working memory by 10 to 12%, which is the equivalent to losing an entire night's sleep. When we are worried about money, it consumes mental bandwidth equivalent to a 13-point IQ drop. In other words, the same mental faculties that you require to do well, excel in your profession, earn more money, drops by 13 points if you worry about not having enough money or not earning enough. In a fascinating study, students at Princeton University in the US were artificially placed under time pressure. And what researchers found was they made the same poor financial decisions as Indian farmers experiencing actual resource scarcity that placed students under artificial time pressure. Students were willing to borrow time at exorbitant interest rates, making decisions that were really expensive in the long run for what appeared to be a short term reward. You and I do this all the time as well. When we are crunched for time, we end up borrowing time from those parts of our life that we pay a high cost for not devoting enough time to. To do well in our career, we may borrow time from our family. We may borrow time from our fitness habits. We may borrow time from spending evenings with friends who energize us and make us remember what we're doing all this for. Our creativity suffers too. Research shows that scarcity mindsets reduce creative problem solving by 30%. Scarcity makes us worse at managing the very resources that we are worried about. Studies at Stanford found that people under financial stress showed 120% more impulsive purchase behaviors and were willing to pay up to 45% more for luxury items despite having less money. Emotionally, the toll is heavy. Financial scarcity increases stress hormone levels by 15 to 25% in the body and doubles the risk of clinical depression. Scarcity also changes how we see the future. Studies show that people experiencing resource scarcity estimated positive future events as 30% less likely to occur than control groups. In other words, just the thought that I do not have enough right now is likely to make me pessimistic about the future as well. It's likely to make me believe that I will also not have enough in the future, no matter how hard and how effectively I'm working towards a different future. This pessimism bias can become self fulfilling. Now, based on these effects, we can identify several archetypes of scarcity. I'm going to run through the list and I'd like you to consider which one resonates with you. Are you the rusher who's always hurried, always rushing, always wanting for time? Or are you the worrier who's anxious, worried about financial security most of the time? Or are you the isolator who withdraws from relationships even though wants connection and finds a scarcity of companionship? Or are you the hoarder who accumulates more and more without enjoying what you already have? Are you the comparer who's never enough relative to others and sometimes jealous of peers' success? Or are you the foggy thinker who's, for some reason, cognitively impaired and struggles to focus and have the attention that you need? Are you the pessimist who sees limited possibilities no matter how green the horizon and expects negative outcomes? Or finally, are you the instant gratifier who always prioritizes seeking impulsive short term rewards? Each of us may be a combination of some of these archetypes. Which of these patterns do you identify with? Where does it typically show up in your life? And what might the underlying scarcity be about? As we close this episode, take a moment to honor the insights that arose for you. Maybe you saw how deeply scarcity has shaped your thinking, or how much of it wasn't even yours to begin with. We explored how scarcity is defined, what its origins and causes are. We explored how the brain adapts and responds to scarcity, how these patterns can become deeply wired, and how they may continue long after our circumstances have changed into one of abundance. We looked at practices to heal scarcity. Healing scarcity isn't about fixing something that's broken, it's about returning to the part of you that knows you are already whole. In the next episode, we look at how to live from that wholeness. We'll explore what abundance means and what it looks like to operate from an abundance mindset. We'll hear stories of some of the wealthiest individuals in human history, people who began with almost nothing, were born into scarcity, and made a powerful shift in mindset before they ever found success. We'll also explore how scarcity thinking and abundance thinking play out in sport and business and our daily life. We'll explore how entire teams, underdog teams, come back from the edge of defeat by anchoring themselves in trust and possibility, even when the scoreboard says you have nothing. And we'll begin building the muscles of abundance, not as a concept, but through daily practices. I look forward to seeing you in episode 2 on cultivating the abundance mindset.